Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I found the checkpoint by accident, which is how most things worth keeping started after everything fell apart. I was headed north out of Kalispell on instinct more than a plan. The radio in my old pickup was nothing but a loop of static and short, panicked transmissions that never finished their sentences. Cell service was a rumor. Highway signs still pointed toward places like they mattered: Whitefish, Columbia Falls, Eureka, but the roads had started to feel like hallways in a building that had already caught fire. You could keep walking, but you were only choosing which door to try first. I'd spent 10 years working for the Montana Department of Transportation. Not an office job, not the kind that came with a tie. I was a field supervisor, winter plows, sanding routes, culvert repairs, those portable message boards that told tourists to slow down and locals to roll their eyes. I knew how to read a road like other people read a face. Fresh tire marks, drifts, potholes. The way a curve collected trash in the ditch like it was a habit. That week, the roads were telling one story over and over. People were leaving in a hurry, and they were not coming back. The first time I saw one of them, one of the infected, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was in the parking lot of a small grocery outside Columbia Falls, early morning. The light still flat and cold. A man stumbled between cars with his arms slightly out, like he was trying to feel his way through smoke. I remember thinking he was injured, drunk, or both. Then he turned, and his eyes didn't land on anything. They just stared through the space in front of him like the world had been replaced by something only he could see. A woman ran from the store screaming, and the man snapped toward the sound. Not like a normal person reacting, more like a switch flipping. He moved fast, too fast for how broken he looked. She tripped on the curb. Someone shouted. A shopping cart tipped over. I didn't stay to learn the next part of that story. I drove. At first, I thought the right answer was distance. Get away from crowds. Get away from the interstate. Get away from the places where thousands of people would try to solve the same problem at the same time. But after 2 days of back roads and shuttered gas stations, I realized distance didn't fix anything. It just changed the shape of the danger. In small towns, the streets were quiet in a way that felt staged. Porch lights were on in the daytime. Doors were open. A dog barked until its voice cracked, then went silent. Some places looked untouched, but you could feel that nobody was inside the houses the way you can feel when a school is closed on a weekday. It isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of routine. I carried what I could. A duffel bag with clothes, a hard hat I didn't need anymore, a water jug, and a small first aid kit I'd built from work supplies over the years. I had a steel pry bar behind the seat, a road flare box, and a roadside reflective vest I stopped wearing the moment I realized bright colors were invitations. For protection, I had what most Montanans had in their truck. I won't romanticize it. It was a tool, not a personality. And the truth is, the thing that kept me alive that first week wasn't a tool. It was habit. Checking mirrors, counting exits, never trusting a quiet corner. The border was an idea I'd never cared much about before. I lived my whole life with it sitting up there on the map like a pencil line. People crossed at the official ports, went skiing, bought cheaper gas, visited family. The rest of us barely thought about it unless there was a wildfire and smoke didn't respect the line. Then the emergency alerts started mentioning temporary closures, and after that, the line became real. It happened fast. One day, there were rumors about closures at the major crossings. The next day, there were videos, grainy, shaky, of cars backed up for miles, people arguing with uniformed officers, and someone, somewhere, pushing through a barricade like the rules were optional. After that, the official broadcasts went inconsistent. Then they stopped. I had no interest in rolling up to an official crossing with hundreds of desperate people packed close together. Crowds were fuel now, and not just for panic, noise, confusion, the kind of mistakes you can't undo. So I drove the kind of roads I knew. County gravel, forest access routes, service roads that were meant for trucks and logging rigs, not refugees. I followed the North Fork of the Flathead for a while, then cut west toward the Tobacco Valley, keeping mountains to my right and distance in my pocket like loose change. By the time I got near Eureka, the sky had that dull, heavy look it gets before snow, even if it isn't cold enough yet. The wind came off Lake Koocanusa and smelled like wet pine and old metal. The world felt paused, like it was waiting for a sound cue. And then I saw it. A portable checkpoint, set up across a narrow paved road that didn't even show up on most GPS maps. 2 Jersey barriers angled like teeth. A pair of orange and white striped gate arms, both lowered, both locked. A small trailer office with a faded seal on the side, State Emergency Management, or something close enough that it had once mattered. A portable light tower, a message board that still had a black screen, as if it couldn't find the words for what was happening. I pulled over at a distance and watched it for a full 5 minutes before I moved closer. There were no people, no vehicles, no fresh tracks. But it didn't look abandoned in the way buildings looked abandoned now, with doors flung open and chaos frozen mid-action. This checkpoint looked like someone had left it the way you leave a work site at the end of a shift, assuming you'll be back tomorrow. That assumption had become a luxury. I approached slowly, engine off for the last 100 yards, rolling on momentum. I listened. Wind. A distant creak from the light tower's mast. A crow somewhere in the trees, complaining. The trailer office door was shut. The windows were tinted, reflecting gray sky. A paper sign was taped inside the glass, but the ink had faded in the sun. I could only make out the last word. Closed. The barriers were official, the kind the state keeps staged for wildfires and washouts. The locks were decent. Not high security, but enough to stop casual trespass. There were 2 small cameras on a pole, cheap, probably meant to record license plates and faces. Above them was an antenna, likely for a cellular hotspot that no longer had a network to talk to. My mind, trained by years of work logistics, started doing what it always did. This checkpoint had power options. The light tower's generator, the trailer's battery system, maybe a small solar panel on the roof. It had visibility. Clear line of sight down the road, both directions, with trees cut back. It had physical control, barriers that could be moved with machinery, gate arms that created a psychological wall even when they weren't strong. Most importantly, it had a purpose that still mattered. Control of movement. In a world where nobody trusted anyone and everything traveled. Panic, infection, rumors. Control of movement was the closest thing to safety. I didn't decide to build a fortress in one dramatic moment. There was no movie scene where I stared at the checkpoint and smiled like I'd found destiny. I was tired, hungry, and alone. I decided, very simply, that it was better than the next 10 miles of unknown. The first thing I did was clear myself a way in without making noise. I kept my distance and walked to the perimeter, looking for blind spots and surprises. Behind the trailer office was a small gravel pad where 2 vehicles could park. There was a steel storage container off to one side, the kind contractors use for tools. It had a heavy lock, also the kind contractors use, which means it was meant to stop honest people, not someone with time and a pry bar. I checked the trees. No movement. No shapes that didn't belong. Then I did something that would have made my old self laugh. I talked out loud. Okay, I said softly, as if the checkpoint needed reassurance. "Let's make you useful." The storage container opened with stubborn resistance and a loud metallic groan that made my spine go tight. I froze, listening for any answer from the forest. Nothing came. I opened it the rest of the way and slipped inside. It was a treasure box for someone like me. Traffic cones, extra reflective signs, rolls of caution tape, a box of zip ties, a bundle of steel fence posts and a manual post driver, 2 cases of bottled water meant for a crew that never came back, a small toolkit, a sledgehammer, a chainsaw that looked newer than most, with 2 spare chains and a fuel can. I closed the door behind me and stood in the dim light, breathing in the smell of oil and dust, feeling something close to relief for the first time in days. If you want to survive, you stop thinking in terms of forever. You think in terms of today, then tonight, then tomorrow morning. That first day, my goal was simple: make the checkpoint mine. I moved my truck into the gravel pad behind the trailer so it couldn't be seen easily from the road. I checked the trailer office door. Locked. The window frames were solid enough to resist a casual break, but not a determined one. I didn't break it right away. I didn't want to shatter glass, not unless I had to. Noise carried. Noise invited. Instead, I used the toolkit from the container and went for the back access panel where utility lines ran. Most portable offices have compromises: cheap locks, weak hinges, vents that assume nobody will ever try to get in from the wrong side because, in normal life, nobody bothers. Normal life was over. I got the panel open, then used the pry bar carefully, controlling the movement so it didn't snap and clang. Once I had the latch from inside, the door opened like it had been waiting for permission. The trailer smelled like old coffee and laminated paperwork. A folding table sat near the window with a clipboard still on it. 2 office chairs. A radio base station. The kind that would have been used to talk to a state dispatch channel, now dead. A small safe bolted to the floor. On the wall was a map of the area with routes highlighted. The official crossing at Roosevelt was marked in thick red, but so were smaller roads. Logging roads, county routes, access paths that could be used in temporary closures. So, my guess was right. This checkpoint was meant to funnel traffic away from unofficial crossings, to keep people from trying their luck on remote roads when the official port was overwhelmed. For a moment, I pictured the crew that had run it. 2 state workers, maybe 1 sheriff's deputy, maybe a National Guard unit for a day or 2. People doing their job, thinking it mattered. It did matter, just not in the way anyone expected. I spent the first night inside that trailer office with the lights off, listening to the wind and any sound that didn't belong. I slept in short bursts with my boots on. I woke up every time the trees shifted. In the morning, the sky was the color of wet concrete, and a thin frost covered the gate arms like dust. I made coffee using a small camp stove I'd kept in my truck for hunting season. The smell filled the trailer, and for a second it felt like normal, which almost made me angry. Then I went to work. Fortifying a place isn't about building a castle. It's about buying seconds. Seconds to see something coming. Seconds to choose a response. Seconds to avoid a bad decision you can't undo. The checkpoint already had the first piece: visibility down the road. What it didn't have was depth. If someone came through those barriers, they would be on top of me fast. So I built layers. I used the fence posts and drove them into the ground in 2 lines behind the main barriers, creating a narrow corridor that forced any vehicle to slow and align. I ran caution tape between posts, not because tape stops anyone, but because it tells a human brain that there is a boundary. People hesitate at boundaries, even flimsy ones, if they think someone is watching. I pulled the Jersey barriers tighter together, leaving just enough space for a single vehicle at a time. Then I dragged a heavy steel chain through them and locked it. The lock wasn't perfect, but it was one more delay. Behind that, I set up a second control point, a portable sign stand with a stop sign and a small table I could move quickly if needed. If I had to interact with someone, I wanted a place where I could speak without letting them get close. Inside the trailer, I found a box of disposable gloves, a few face masks, and a thermal forehead thermometer. It wasn't medical grade. It was meant for basic screening, but it was better than guessing. I also found a binder labeled Procedures, and I laughed once, short, humorless. Then I read it like it was scripture. It had checklists for everything: how to stage vehicles, how to document crossings, how to handle aggressive individuals, how to contact law enforcement support. Most of it assumed help existed. Still, the structure mattered. In a world that had lost structure, a binder full of procedures was a kind of sanity. By noon, I had a system. Not a perfect one, but a system. And then, because the universe loves timing, the first people arrived. It started with the sound of an engine long before I saw the vehicle. A low, steady rumble on the narrow road, not frantic, not racing. Whoever it was, they weren't running blind. They were moving with intention. I took my position inside the trailer office, behind the tinted window, watching. A dark green sport utility vehicle rolled into view and slowed at the barriers. It had a roof rack loaded with plastic storage bins strapped down with ratchet straps. The front bumper was dented. The driver didn't honk. They didn't push. They stopped and waited. That was a good sign, if any signs were still good. I stepped outside and stayed behind my second control point, making sure the distance was clear. I raised one hand, palm out, stop. Then I pointed to the driver's side window and made a slow rolling motion. Lower it. The window cracked down a few inches. A woman's face appeared in the gap. Mid-30s, tired eyes, dark hair pulled back. Her cheeks were wind-chapped. She looked like someone who'd been driving too long without sleep. "Please," she said. Her voice was controlled, but it had that tight edge like a rope under strain. "We're not looking for trouble." "Neither am I," I said. "Who are you?" "Maya Chen. I'm a nurse. We're headed north. We heard the main crossing was bad." "Who's we?" A man leaned into view from the passenger seat. He was broad-shouldered, with a trimmed beard and a ball cap pulled low. "Eli Ramirez," he said. "Former Border Patrol, retired. We're trying to reach family in Alberta." Border Patrol, United States side most likely. He had the posture, the careful eye movement, the way he looked past me at the whole setup, assessing. In the back seat, a teenage boy stared forward with the blank exhaustion of someone whose world had been rewritten too fast. Next to him, an older woman held a small dog in her lap, the dog shaking like it had never stopped. I kept my voice even. "This road is closed." "I can see that," Maya said, "but nobody's here. We've been on back roads for 2 days. We don't want to go into a crowd, we just want through." I didn't answer immediately. I watched the vehicle. I watched their hands. I watched the way the boy in back didn't move much, like he'd learned that stillness was safer. My brain ran the problem like a work scenario. This checkpoint could become a choke point, and choke points attract pressure. If I let them through, I proved the barrier could be negotiated. If I turned them away, I made enemies I might not survive later. If I brought them inside my perimeter, I took risk. Then I asked the question that had become the first question of the new world. "Is anyone sick?" Maya's eyes hardened slightly, not angry, just tired of the same question. "No, we've been careful. We haven't stopped except to fuel. We've avoided people." "Any injuries?" "No." Eli added, "We know what this is. We've seen it up close. We're not bringing it to you." That sentence, "we know what this is," told me they'd already lost something. I took a breath, then made a choice. "Engine off," I said. "Keys on the dash, windows up except that gap. Nobody exits the vehicle until I tell you." Eli nodded, immediately compliant. That also told me something. A man used to procedures will follow procedures if they make sense. I stepped closer, still keeping distance. I asked their names, ages, where they'd come from. Maya answered like she was used to triage, giving facts without drama. Eli added details about the roads, the conditions, what they'd seen near the main crossing. It was worse than I'd imagined. People were stuck, he said. Vehicles abandoned in lanes. Some folks tried to walk. That's when it went sideways. Too much noise, too many bodies packed close. He didn't say more, and I didn't ask. I didn't want pictures in my head. I used the thermometer through the window gap. It beeped. Normal. I asked each of them to show me their wrists, their necks, any visible skin for obvious bites or injuries. It felt invasive, but the alternative was letting a threat inside my only shelter. When I was satisfied, I walked around the vehicle, checking the back, the cargo, the underside. Not because I thought they were hiding something, because checkpoints are about consistency. If you treat everyone differently, you create holes. Finally, I returned to the front and looked at them through the window gap. "This isn't a free road anymore," I said. "If you go through, you don't come back this way unless it's an emergency. I can't have people turning this into a highway." Maya nodded. Understood. "And if you tell anyone about this route," Eli cut in, calm. "We won't, but others will find it anyway." He was right. Roads don't stay secret. Tire tracks tell stories. I stared at the barriers, then back at them. "I'll open it for you, one vehicle at a time, slow. If you see anything out there, don't stop to help strangers. I hate saying that, but that's how people end up in trouble." Maya's face tightened. "We learned that." I unlocked the chain, dragged one Jersey barrier with all my strength, and raised the gate arm. The vehicle rolled forward slowly, tires crunching gravel. As they passed, Eli lowered his window a little more. "You're alone?" he asked. "For now." He hesitated, then said something I didn't expect. "You won't be for long." Then they were gone, the road swallowing them into gray forest, leaving only the faint smell of exhaust and the sudden emptiness of silence. I reset the checkpoint immediately, locking everything back into place, checking every post and barrier like I was sealing a hatch. Because now the checkpoint wasn't just a shelter, it was a signal. People would come. The second group arrived that same afternoon, and they were nothing like Maya and Eli. A dusty pickup with no plates, followed by an older sedan that looked like it had been driven through brush. They rolled up fast, stopped too close, and one of the men in the pickup leaned out with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he called, "road's closed, huh?" I didn't step out from behind my control point. "That's right. We need through." "Then you need to turn around." The grin stayed. "Come on, there's nobody up here. We're just trying to get to the other side." I watched the passenger in the pickup. He was scanning the area, measuring my setup. The driver had a baseball bat resting across his lap like it was a casual accessory. This wasn't a family trying to survive. This was a test. "I'm not opening it," I said. The driver's grin faded. "You running this now?" "I'm keeping it closed." The sedan behind them honked once, impatient. A woman's face flashed in the windshield, anxious, then vanished as she ducked back down. The driver leaned out farther. "You don't own this road." I kept my voice level. "I'm not claiming ownership. I'm telling you it's closed. Turn around." He stared at me for a long moment, then sat back. The pickup rolled forward a foot, then stopped. The passenger spoke quietly to him. The driver's jaw worked. Then, instead of forcing it, they did something worse. They backed up, slowly, then turned around. But they didn't leave. They pulled off the road into the tree line, where they could watch the checkpoint from a distance. My stomach sank. That's the thing about people who live outside the rules even when rules exist. When the old world collapses, they don't panic. They see opportunity. They see a map with fewer consequences. I spent the rest of that day reinforcing what I could without making the checkpoint look like a challenge. There's a delicate balance in fortification. If you look weak, people push. If you look like a treasure chest, people plan. I moved the storage container slightly, using the pickup's winch and a lot of careful positioning, so it created a partial wall behind the trailer office. I parked my truck on the opposite side, making a second barrier. I strung reflective tape low between posts, not as a weapon, not as a trap, but as a way to catch movement in the headlights at night. That night, I didn't sleep. Around 1:15 a.m., I saw headlights flicker through the trees on the left, not approaching the checkpoint straight on, moving sideways, searching for a way around. My hands went cold. I stayed still, watching through a small gap in the trailer window's blinds. The pickup and sedan had brought friends. 3 figures moved in the tree line, slow and careful, trying to stay dark. They weren't infected. Infected didn't move with patience. They moved with impulse and sound. These were people. And people, I was learning, were the harder problem. I didn't have a backup team, no radio network, no help 10 minutes away. The only thing I had was the checkpoint itself, and my ability to convince them the cost wasn't worth it. So I turned the checkpoint into a stage. I didn't run outside shouting threats. I didn't fire warning shots or do anything dramatic that could spiral fast. Instead, I waited until one of them reached the first line of posts near the Jersey barrier. Then I hit the light tower. The portable light tower roared to life with a deep engine sound that ripped the quiet apart, and the floodlights swung on, bathing the whole checkpoint in white glare. It was as bright as a football field. Anyone within 200 yards would be exposed. The figures froze, caught like animals. At the same moment, I turned on the message board. It flickered, then displayed the last thing it had been programmed to say before whoever ran this place left. Road closed. Turnaround. The men stumbled back into the trees, shielding their faces from the light. I heard a hissed curse, more frustration than fear. Good. Frustration means they weren't committed enough to pay a high price. The lights stayed on for a full 10 minutes. The generator's noise was ugly, loud, and I hated it. But I hated the alternative more. When I finally shut it down, the forest was quiet again, but the quiet had teeth now. I knew the checkpoint had been marked. From that night on, I treated the checkpoint like a living thing that needed routines to stay alive. Morning, perimeter check, barrier check, inventory check. I logged everything in a notebook from the trailer office: time, weather, events, vehicle sightings. Not because anyone would read it later, because writing it kept my thoughts organized, and because if I died, maybe the notebook would tell the next person what not to do. I set up a hand-washing station with a water jug and soap. I designated a clean zone inside the trailer and a dirty zone near the entrance where shoes stayed. I found a box of disposable coveralls in the storage container and shook my head at the irony of how prepared the old world had been for some things, and how useless it had been for others. I also started listening for radio signals. The trailer office radio base station was dead without the state network, but the antenna on the roof could be repurposed. In the storage container, I found a handheld radio, a basic two-way, likely meant for crew communication. I also had a personal amateur radio handheld in my truck, something I'd used during storms when cell towers went down and old-timers still talked across valleys like it was the 1970s. I didn't have a license that mattered anymore. Licenses were paper, Communication was survival. I scanned frequencies, listening for anything coherent. Most of what I heard was noise, short bursts, people calling without answers. Then, on the third day at the checkpoint, I heard a steady voice. Any station, any station? This is Cedar 2. If you can hear me, respond. We are at the old way station south of Libby, seeking contact for resource exchange. Repeat, seeking contact. A way station near Libby. That was real. That meant organized people. That meant potential allies, or potential competition. I waited, listened again, then pressed the transmit button. Cedar 2, this is... I'm not sure what to call myself yet, I said, keeping my voice calm. I'm at a temporary border checkpoint near Eureka. I can hear you. There was a pause. Then the voice came back sharper, more alert. Copy, identify. I hesitated. Names mattered now. Names created expectations. This is Luke, I said. Former road maintenance, solo at the moment. Another pause. Then, Luke, this is Cedar 2. We have a small group. We're not looking to take anything. We're trying to build a network. Are you secure? Secure enough, I said. Any traffic? I looked out the window at the empty road, then at the tree line where I knew eyes had been recently. Some, I said. Enough to know this place won't stay quiet. Understood, Cedar 2 said. We can send someone to talk if you want. Daylight only. My instincts argued both sides at once. People meant risk. People also meant manpower, watch rotations, and a chance to not lose my mind talking to myself. Send one, I said. One vehicle, slow approach, I'll signal. Copy, Cedar 2 said. Cedar 2 out. I sat back in the chair, staring at the radio. My hand was shaking slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of the decision. The checkpoint was no longer just a place. It was becoming a node. And nodes attract conflict. The next day, at 11:20 a.m., a single vehicle approached. A white utility van with Lincoln County, faintly visible under mud. It slowed exactly where Maya's vehicle had slowed, stopped at the barrier, and waited. That discipline eased something in my chest. I stepped outside and made the same signals. Stop. Window down slightly, engine off. The driver complied. A woman leaned into view. Late 40s maybe, gray hair tucked under a beanie. Her eyes were sharp in a way that made me think she'd been the adult in too many emergencies even before the outbreak. Luke? She asked. That's me. I'm Nora Petrov, she said. Mechanic. Also, the one who keeps Cedar 2's vehicles alive. I'm here to talk, not bargain you into anything. Mechanic, useful, also dangerous if she was scouting. Talk, I said. Nora glanced at the checkpoint setup with professional curiosity. You did good work with what you had, she said. This place is better than most. It's quiet, I said, for now. It won't be, she said bluntly. That's why I'm here. I didn't like how honest that was. She continued. South of you, around towns like Libby and Troy, things are getting unstable. There are groups forming. Some want to help, some want to control. A checkpoint like this, control of movement, it's going to be a prize. I already had visitors, I said. Smugglers? She asked. I gave a small nod. Nora's mouth tightened. Then you're already on their map. Cedar 2 wants to offer you an arrangement, not ownership, not takeover. Arrangement. I stayed quiet. We're building safe corridors, she said. Routes where people can move without walking into crowds or dead ends. We don't have enough people to guard every road, but we can support key points, like this one. And what do you want in return? I asked. Nora's eyes held mine. Stability. Predictability. If you run this checkpoint with clear rules, screening, quarantine, no weapons waved around, no threats, then people who are trying to survive will prefer this route over the chaos. That reduces pressure on the big crossings and reduces panic in towns. It becomes a valve. A valve, I repeated. Yeah, she said. Because borders still matter, not because of politics. Because movement spreads problems, and because movement also brings resources. You control movement. You control what arrives. I felt the truth of that in my bones. It wasn't a slogan. It was engineering logic. Water flows where it can. People do too. What's your offer? I asked. Nora exhaled, like she'd been waiting for the question. We can spare 2 people to rotate here if you want. Not full-time. Rotations. 3 days at a time. We can bring a better radio setup, some fuel, some food. In exchange, you share information. Who comes through, what they report, any threats, and you don't let anyone turn this into a smuggling lane. There it is, I said. Nora's expression didn't change. There it is. Because if smugglers own this place, then desperate families will avoid it, and only the worst people will use it. Then your fortress becomes a trap, and the rest of us pay for it. I stared at the road, imagining the checkpoint as a trap. Imagining crowds, arguments, panic, the infected drawn by sound. I didn't want that. But accepting help meant surrendering some control. 2 people, I said slowly. Rotations. Nora nodded. You stay in charge of the checkpoint. Clear rules. We back you up. If a bigger group tries to take it, you call, we respond. And if you don't respond? I asked. Nora's gaze sharpened. Then we all lose. That's why we respond. I believed she believed it. Belief wasn't enough, but it was something. I opened the barrier for her, just enough to let the van roll into the gravel pad behind the trailer. When she stepped out, she kept her hands visible and moved with the caution of someone who respected unknown spaces. Inside the trailer, we talked for an hour. We laid out rules like engineers laying out a plan. Where vehicles stopped, how screening worked, what quarantine meant in practice when you didn't have a hospital. We discussed how to keep interactions calm. No shouting, no crowding, no sudden movements. Then, Nora did something that made me trust her more than any promise. She took out a notebook and wrote everything down. Routine saves lives, she said simply. That afternoon, we heard the first distant gunfire from somewhere south, far enough that it was only faint pops on the wind, but close enough to remind me that the world hadn't just fallen into silence, it had fallen into competition. Nora left before dusk, heading back to Cedar 2 with my agreement and a list of needs. Fuel for the light tower generator, spare batteries, a better antenna, and more medical screening supplies. She promised to return in 2 days with the first rotation team. When she drove away, the checkpoint felt different. Not safer, just committed. Because now, if this place became a fortress, it wouldn't just be my fortress. It would be a line in a map that other people depended on. 2 days later, the rotation team arrived. Samira, Khatib, and Tom McKinnon. Samira was in her 20s, small, sharp-eyed, wearing a headset around her neck like it was a comfort object. She introduced herself as an emergency communications volunteer before the collapse. The kind of person who staffed wildfire shelters and coordinated supply drops. She spoke fast, but her hands were steady. Tom was in his 60s, a rancher type with weathered skin and a calm that felt earned. He carried himself like someone who'd spent a lifetime in open country where panic didn't help and complaining didn't fix fences. They came with supplies: 2 jerry cans of gasoline, a case of canned food, a box of rechargeable batteries, and a compact radio base with a better antenna mount. They also brought something I hadn't realized I needed until I saw it: company. With 3 people, the checkpoint became a machine instead of a gamble. We could run watch rotations. We could sleep. We could plan. Samira set up the radio system and started logging transmissions, building a picture of who was out there. Tom reinforced the fence posts and helped me clear brush lines so we had better visibility. And inevitably, more people came. Some were like Maya and Eli, families trying to avoid chaos, moving quietly, grateful for any structure. We screened them, asked questions, checked visible injuries, and sent them through one at a time with warnings about the roads ahead. Some were like the smugglers, testing boundaries, trying to negotiate exceptions, offering trade that felt like a hook. They'd show up with too much confidence, too little fear. One afternoon, a man in a black pickup rolled up with a woman beside him and a cooler in the back seat. He smiled too easily. "I've got antibiotics," he said, tapping the cooler. "Real stuff, not expired." Samira and I exchanged a look. Antibiotics were currency now. "What do you want?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just access, quiet access. There's a road on the other side that leads to friends, smugglers, or something adjacent." "No," I said. His smile thinned. "You don't even know what you're turning down." "I know enough," I said. He leaned out. "Borders are done, man. Nobody's in charge." I stepped closer to the stop line, keeping my posture calm. Borders aren't done. They're just local now. And here, I'm in charge of this road. For a moment, the air tightened. Tom shifted slightly behind me, not aggressive, just present. Samira's hand went to the radio mic without pressing transmit, ready. The man stared at the barriers, then back at me. Then he laughed once, like he'd heard a joke. "Okay," he said. "Okay, you'll learn." He turned around and left. After he was gone, Samira exhaled slowly. "That felt like a promise," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It did." We started seeing signs of organized movement in the next week. Not just families, patrol remnants. One morning at 9:10 a.m., 2 vehicles approached in a tight formation. A sheriff's department sport utility vehicle with its markings partially covered, and a military-style pickup with a light bar. They stopped at the barrier, and a man in a tan uniform stepped out. He kept his hands visible and walked forward slowly. "Morning," he called. Tom and I stepped out together. "Morning," I answered. The man stopped at our control point line, respecting the boundary without being told. That alone was a good sign. "Name's Eric Dalton," he said. "Used to be with the county sheriff's office. We're trying to keep routes clear and prevent incidents." "Incidents," I repeated. Dalton's face tightened. "People doing stupid things. People taking advantage, you know." I did. He glanced at the checkpoint setup. "You running this?" "We are," I said. "We're screening traffic. 1 vehicle at a time, no crowding." Dalton nodded slightly, approving. "Good. We heard about trouble near the official crossings. We're trying to redirect people away from crowds. This place helps." "Until it becomes a fight," I said. Dalton didn't deny it. "That's why I'm here. We're coordinating with groups like Cedar 2, trying to keep some order. If you get pressure, real pressure, you call it in. We'll respond if we can." It sounded similar to Nora's offer, but Dalton's presence added a new layer. Legitimacy. Legitimacy mattered because people craved it. They wanted to believe there were still rules somewhere, still a system that would catch them if they stumbled. But legitimacy was also bait. It drew people who wanted to seize it. Dalton handed me a paper map with handwritten notes. Routes marked safe, routes marked avoid. Areas where infected were reported moving in clusters along rivers and highways. He pointed to a line near the border. "There's chatter about a group using unofficial crossings to move goods, sometimes people. They're not friendly. If they show up here, don't bargain." I almost laughed at the timing. "We've met their scouts," I said. Dalton's jaw tightened. "Then you're on their radar." "Yeah," I said, "we know." Dalton nodded once, then stepped back. "Keep doing what you're doing. Structure beats panic. That's what we've learned." As they drove away, Samira watched them go with a distant expression. "Do you trust them?" she asked. "I trust that they believe in what they're doing," I said. "That's not the same thing as trusting that they'll win." Tom grunted softly. "Winning ain't the point," he said. "Surviving is." That became the checkpoint's rhythm. Survival by routine, routine by rules. And then winter arrived early, like it wanted to close the door on whatever was left. The first real snow hit overnight, not a gentle dusting. A heavy wet fall that turned to crust by morning. The road became slick, and vehicle approaches slowed. The world went quieter, muffled. Snow was both friend and enemy. It reduced movement, reduced noise, reduced random travelers. But it also trapped people. A car stuck in a drift became a beacon. A stalled engine became a deadline. That's when we got the call that changed everything. Samira was on the radio at 7:45 p.m., scanning, when a voice broke through, ragged, frantic. Any station, this is River Group. We are on the North Road near the temporary checkpoint by Eureka. We need help. We have infected on the road. We can't go forward. We can't go back." Samira's eyes snapped to mine. "That's us," she whispered. I took the microphone. "River Group, this is border checkpoint. How many vehicles? How many people?" Static, then 3 vehicles, 9 people, 2 kids. We're stuck behind a downed tree. They're coming out of the trees. My stomach tightened. Downed tree meant blocked road. Blocked road meant no easy retreat. "Stay inside vehicles," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Engine running if you can. Lights off if safe. Do not honk. Do not shout." "We can hear them," the voice said, trembling. They're making noise." Infected didn't whisper. They didn't plan. But they did respond to sound. Tom was already pulling on his coat. "We can't leave folks out there," he said. He wasn't asking permission. He was stating reality. I looked at Samira. "Can you get their exact location?" She nodded, already working the radio, asking for landmarks, mile markers, anything. I turned to Tom. We go quiet. We don't turn this into a parade." Tom's eyes were grim. "Quiet," he agreed. We didn't have the luxury of a rescue convoy. We took the county van because it had better traction and space. We packed blankets, water, a saw for the downed tree, and a loud air horn as a last resort distraction. Not a weapon, something to pull attention away if we needed a window. We drove with headlights low, moving slow, tires crunching snow. My hands were tight on the wheel. Every curve felt like it could hide something. We found them about 2 miles down the road. 3 vehicles huddled behind a tree that had fallen across one lane. Branches tangled. Trunk thick enough that no car would push through. The vehicle's lights were off. Inside, faces glowed pale in the dim. And in the tree line to the right, shapes moved. Not fast, not running. Drifting toward the vehicles like moths toward a porch light. "Stay in the van?" I whispered to Samira, who'd insisted on coming. She shook her head, jaw set, and I didn't argue. There wasn't time. Tom and I stepped out quietly, boots sinking into snow. The cold hit my lungs like a slap. We moved toward the tree, keeping our movements slow. The goal wasn't confrontation. The goal was clearance and escape. Tom started the chainsaw, but only for a second, just enough to confirm it would run. Then he shut it off immediately. We couldn't afford the noise until the last moment. I approached the lead vehicle, a sedan, and tapped the window gently. A man inside flinched, then lowered it a crack. "Border checkpoint," I whispered. "We're going to clear the tree and move you back. No noise, no doors opening unless we tell you." The man nodded rapidly, eyes wide. Behind me, Tom positioned himself at the tree. He looked at me, and I nodded once. We were going to have to make noise, that was unavoidable. But we could control how long. Tom started the saw again, and the sound tore through the quiet like a rip in cloth. Immediately, the shapes in the trees changed. Heads snapped, bodies shifted. They started moving faster. "Now," I whispered into the radio to Samira, who held the air horn. Tom cut fast, not careful. 2 main cuts, trunk sectioned enough to roll. Snow sprayed from the chain. The infected, 5, maybe 6, moved toward us, drawn by the sound like it was gravity. Samira raised the air horn and blasted it once. Not long, just sharp. Then she pointed it away from us, toward the open road behind the vehicles, and blasted again. The infected turned toward the horn's direction, confused, pulled by the louder, closer sound. "Move," I hissed at the vehicles. "Back up now, slow, one at a time." Engine started, low rumble. Tires spun slightly, then gripped. The sedan backed first, careful, then the sport utility vehicle, then a pickup. Tom kicked the cut trunk section aside, clearing enough space for the vehicles to slip around. The saw roared another few seconds, then died as he shut it down. The infected were now moving toward the air horn's last blast location, drifting away from us. We didn't wait for luck to change its mind. We shepherded the vehicles back towards the checkpoint, slow and steady. No honking, no shouting. When we arrived, we brought them into the gravel pad behind the trailer, one by one, and closed the barriers again like we were sealing a pressure door. Inside the trailer, the rescued group sat on the floor in chairs, wrapped in blankets, shaking, not from cold alone. A woman held 2 kids close, whispering to them like she could sew their nerves back together with words. I asked the routine questions: any injuries, any sickness, any contact. They answered, and the answers were mostly clean, mostly terrified. One of the men, mid-30s, tired eyes, looked around the trailer and swallowed hard. "I thought borders didn't matter anymore," he said, voice rough. "I thought we could just go." Tom sat heavily in a chair. "Borders always matter," he said. "They just change what they mean." That night, as the rescued group slept in shifts inside our dirty zone, I sat at the folding table with Samira and stared at the map. The checkpoint had saved them. It had also proven itself as something bigger than a shelter. It was now a known refuge. And refuge is a magnet. Within 48 hours, more people arrived. Not just families, not just smugglers. A group of 6 men in mismatched gear, hunting jackets, tactical vests, radios clipped to straps, pulled up in 2 trucks and didn't stop at the barrier. They rolled right up to it and sat there, engines idling, like they were waiting for a door to be opened by staff. The lead man stepped out. He was tall, broad, with a trimmed beard and a calm confidence that felt practiced. He walked forward with his hands visible, but his people stayed near the trucks, watching angles. He stopped at the control point line and smiled. "Evening," he said. "I hear you're running a clean crossing here." "It's closed," I said. He chuckled softly. "Everything's closed, friend. That's not the question. The question is who controls what's closed." Tom's jaw tightened beside me. Samira held the radio mic ready. The man continued, voice smooth. "We're putting together security in the region, keeping order, making sure good people aren't trapped behind bad barriers. We'd like to incorporate this checkpoint into our network." "Incorporate," I repeated. He nodded. "You keep doing what you're doing. We provide protection, resources, fuel, ammunition." He said that last word casually, like it was just another supply category. My skin went cold. Not because of the offer, because of what it meant. They weren't asking. Not really. "What do you want in exchange?" I asked. He spread his hands. "A small toll, a percentage of goods passing through, and we manage who gets access. No more smugglers, no more freeloaders, just order." Samira's eyes flicked to mine. This wasn't order, this was control. "I'm not interested," I said. The man's smile thinned, but he didn't lose it. "You're alone out here." "I'm not," I said. He glanced past me at the trailer, the barriers, the light tower. He was measuring our strength without needing to see it demonstrated. "You'll change your mind," he said, echoing the smuggler's earlier tone. "Because this place is valuable, and valuable things attract attention. You can't hold it without a larger group." He turned and walked back to his truck without waiting for my response. Before he got in, he looked back once. "Think about it," he said. "If we're not the ones to run this checkpoint, someone else will, and they might not be as polite." Then they left, engines rumbling away into snowy dusk. Silence filled the space after them like a heavy cloth. Tom exhaled slowly. "That," he said, "is trouble." Samira's voice was tight. "We need to tell Cedar 2 and Dalton." "Yeah," I said, "we do." That night, we held a radio meeting that felt like the closest thing to a council the region had left. Cedar 2 came on the line, Nora's voice steady. Dalton's group joined, his tone clipped and controlled. A couple other stations checked in, groups I didn't recognize, voices cautious. We described the men, the trucks, the offer. Nora didn't sound surprised. "They're calling themselves Frontier Security," she said. "We've heard of them. They started as a neighborhood watch around a small town, then grew teeth." "Are they dangerous?" Samira asked. "They're organized," Nora said. "That's dangerous enough." Dalton's voice cut in. "They're not recognized law enforcement, they're opportunists. If they take that checkpoint, they control movement and supplies. They become a government without responsibility." I stared at the map and felt the weight of the checkpoint like a stone in my chest. "We can't fight a whole group," I said into the radio. "We're 3 people." Nora answered immediately. "Then we make it bigger. Rotations become permanent. We put more eyes there. We make the checkpoint a community asset, not a personal asset. If Frontier Security tries to take it, they have to take it from everyone, not just you." Dalton added, "And if they make a move, we respond. But you need to hold long enough for response." Hold long enough. That phrase can sound heroic. In reality, it means enduring fear with your teeth clenched and your hands steady. The next week became a race between fortification and pressure. Cedar 2 sent 2 more people. A quiet young man named Owen, who'd been a warehouse worker and knew inventory like a language, and an older woman named Denise, who'd been a school principal and had the kind of authority that made grown men lower their voices without realizing it. Dalton sent 1 deputy, Maria Esparza, who arrived with a county radio and a calm professionalism that made me feel like the old world was still breathing somewhere. With 6 of us, the checkpoint became a small outpost. We set up a separate sleeping area inside the storage container with sleeping bags and insulation. We created a clear approach lane and designated waiting zones for vehicles. 1 at the barrier, 1 back at a marked line, no more. We created a no exceptions policy. No one crossed without screening. No one approached on foot without stopping at distance. Denise created a sign, hand-painted on plywood, and posted it at the barrier. Checkpoint active. 1 vehicle at a time, follow instructions. Under it, she wrote, "Calm movement, =, safe movement." It wasn't poetic, it was practical. and it worked more than I expected. People want rules when the world loses them. They might complain, but they follow if the rules feel fair. Smugglers don't want fair. They want gaps. Frontier Security returned 2 days later, this time with 4 vehicles, and they didn't stop at the tree line to watch. They stopped at the barrier like they owned the road. The leader stepped out again, same smooth smile. "Good to see you've got staff now," he said, eyes sweeping our group. "We're closed," Maria Esparza said calmly, stepping forward with her deputy posture. "Turn around." The man's smile tightened. "Deputy," he said, "I respect what you used to be, but those badges don't mean much now." Maria's voice stayed even. "They mean as much as we make them mean." The leader chuckled. "That's the spirit. That's why we're here. We make order." "No," I said, stepping up beside Maria. "You make control. There's a difference." He looked at me like I was a stubborn piece of equipment. "You're holding a valuable choke point," he said. "We can share, or we can waste time pretending you can keep it." Denise's voice came from behind us, sharp as a bell. "This checkpoint is for safe passage, not tolls, not bullying, not your private network." The leader's eyes flicked to Denise, then back to us. He held his smile, but it had turned colder. "Last offer," he said. "Join us, and you keep your roles. Refuse, and eventually you'll lose this place. Not necessarily to us, but you'll lose it." He turned away, then stopped and looked back one last time. "You know what's coming," he said softly. Then they left. The next 3 days were the quiet before the storm. We saw watchers in the tree line twice, figures at a distance, not approaching, just observing. We found tire tracks where there shouldn't have been tire tracks. We heard distant engines at night, moving slow. Samira intercepted radio chatter, short, coded phrases that suggested coordination. Owen counted supplies and frowned. "We can hold for a while," he said. "But if this becomes a siege, fuel becomes the problem." Fuel was always the problem. You can fortify walls, you can ration food, but fuel runs generators, runs vehicles, runs heat. In winter, fuel becomes time. On the 4th night, it happened. It started at 2:30 a.m. with a sound that didn't belong, a heavy engine approaching without care, without stealth. Then another, then a third. Headlights appeared down the road, bright and steady, like a convoy that wanted to be seen. We took positions behind cover. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just practical. Maria held the radio ready to call Dalton. Samira monitored frequencies. Tom stood with his jaw set, calm as stone. The vehicles stopped at the barrier. 4 of them. Frontier Security. The leader stepped out, but he didn't walk up smiling this time. He walked up like a man completing a task. "Open it," he called. Maria's voice cut through the night. "Turn around." He laughed once, sharp. "No, we're taking this checkpoint. Peacefully if you cooperate. Unpleasantly if you don't." My mouth went dry. I felt the weight of every decision that had led here. "We're not fighting you," I called back. "We're not opening it." The leader's eyes narrowed. He nodded to someone behind him. Then a 5th vehicle appeared. An old dump truck, headlights glaring, rolling forward slow but unstoppable. My stomach dropped. A dump truck could move barriers. It could smash the gate arms. It could turn our careful layers into debris. Tom's voice was low beside me. "They're gonna ram." "Light tower," I said to Owen. "Now." Owen sprinted to the generator control, hands moving fast. The light tower roared to life, floodlights snapping on, blasting the scene with white glare. In the harsh light, I saw the dump truck's grill, the driver's silhouette. the way the leader stood off to one side like he didn't care what got broken. Maria raised the radio. Dalton, this is border checkpoint. We have a forced breach attempt. Repeat, forced breach attempt. We need support now." Static, then Dalton's voice, tight. "Copy, units responding. Hold position." Hold position. The dump truck rolled forward. In that moment, I understood something with crystal clarity. The fortress wasn't walls. It was choices. I grabbed the radio mic Samira held and switched to an open channel. "All vehicles on this road do not approach the checkpoint," I said, voice steady. "Repeat, do not approach. Active confrontation at the barrier." Then I looked at the leader and called out something he didn't expect. "You rammed this," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "You break the road control. You break the corridor. After that, you don't control movement. You create chaos, and chaos brings the infected." He stared at me, expression hard. I kept going because sometimes the only weapon you have is consequences. "You do this loud," I said. "You do this messy. You draw everything in the woods to this point. You'll be standing in the middle of it when they arrive." For a second, the leader hesitated. Not because he cared about us, because he cared about himself. The dump truck slowed slightly. The driver looked toward the leader, waiting for confirmation. Then, from somewhere down the road behind Frontier Security's vehicles came a sound that made everyone freeze. A distant, uneven chorus of voices, ragged, relentless, moving toward noise. The infected. They were already in the area, drifting through the trees, and the convoy had announced itself like a dinner bell. I saw the leader's eyes change. Calculation replaced dominance. He raised a hand sharply. The dump truck stopped. Behind them, movement flickered in the tree line, shapes approaching, drawn by engines and voices and the generator's roar. Maria's voice was calm but urgent. "You hear that?" she called to the leader. "That's what you're inviting." The leader stared into the trees, then back at us. The mask of control cracked slightly. He made a decision. "Back up," he snapped to his people. "Now!" Vehicles started, reversing quickly. The dump truck grumbled backward. The leader moved fast, jumping into the lid vehicle. Frontier Security retreated into the darkness just as the first infected shapes broke into the road edge, stumbling toward the light and sound. We didn't celebrate. We didn't cheer. We shut the light tower down as soon as the vehicles were gone, killing the generator's roar and plunging the checkpoint back into quiet. Then we waited in the dark, listening as the infected drifted past the barrier area, confused by the sudden disappearance of noise. It took nearly an hour for the road to settle back into silence. When it did, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. Maria put a hand on my shoulder briefly. "You did good," she said. "Simple, grounded." Tom exhaled slowly. "They'll be back," he said. "Yeah," I said. "But now they know something." Samira looked at me. "What?" "That this checkpoint isn't just a prize," I said. "It's risk." 2 hours later, Dalton's vehicles arrived, 3 of them. Lights off, moving quiet. He stepped out, face tight with exhaustion. "You held," he said. "We did," I answered. Dalton looked at the barriers, the posts, the dark road. "They tried to force it?" "They were going to," Mariah said. "Then the infected showed up." Dalton's jaw clenched. "They'll change tactics." "I know," I said. Dalton stared at me for a long moment, then said something I didn't expect. "This checkpoint matters," he said. "Not because of the border, because it's a place where rules still exist. If people have one place like that, they behave better everywhere else. You're not just guarding a road, you're guarding a concept." A concept. I thought about that after Dalton left. long after the adrenaline faded and the cold settled into my bones. In the old world, borders were paperwork and politics. In this world, borders were agreements, lines drawn by people who were tired of chaos and willing to enforce calm. We didn't have a government, we didn't have courts, we didn't have the old systems. But we had something else, fragile and stubborn. We had routines, we had rules. We had a place where movement slowed down long enough for people to remember they were human. Over the next month, the checkpoint became exactly what Nora had predicted. A valve. Refugees came through in ones and twos, avoiding crowds. We screened them, sent them on, and logged their reports. We learned which roads were blocked, which towns were quiet, which areas had become dangerous. Smugglers tried again, offering trade and favors, trying to create exceptions. We refused every time, calmly, consistently. Frontier security circled like wolves, but they stopped trying to ram. They started trying to recruit. They'd show up with friendly faces, offering fuel, offering protection, offering a place in their network. We refused, politely and firmly, every time. And the infected, always present, always moving, became part of the environment like weather. They drifted toward noise, toward light, toward mistakes. We learned to be quiet. We learned to be boring. Boring kept you alive. The biggest change wasn't the barriers or the fence posts. It was the way people started treating the checkpoint like a real crossing. They'd pull up and wait. They'd lower windows only when asked. They'd follow instructions. They'd say, "Thank you," in voices that sounded like relief. Even some of the rougher travelers, men who looked like they'd lived outside rules even before the collapse, would comply when they realized we weren't bluffing and we weren't cruel. We were consistent. Consistency became our fortress. One evening in late December, when the sky was clear and the stars looked close enough to touch, I stood at the barrier and watched a family vehicle disappear north into the trees. Their taillights faded, swallowed by the forest. Samira stepped up beside me, breath steaming. "You ever think about what's on the other side?" she asked softly. "Canada?" I said. "Not the country," she said. "The idea, like, what do they have up there? Is it better? Worse?" I stared into the dark road. "I think it's the same," I said. "Just different people trying different rules." Samira nodded slowly. "Borders still matter," she murmured. "Yeah," I said. "They do. Not because a government says so, because people need lines. They need places where the chaos slows down." Behind us, the trailer office hummed softly with battery power. Inside, Denise was updating the logbook. Tom was asleep in a chair, boots still on. Maria was cleaning equipment quietly, methodical. Owen was counting supplies again because that was his way of controlling fear. It wasn't a big fortress with towers and banners. It was a handful of tired people keeping a road calm. And in a world where everything else had collapsed, that calm felt like the strongest thing I'd ever built. I looked at the barrier one more time, hand resting on cold metal, and I understood the final truth of it. The border wasn't the line on the map. The border was the decision we made every day to keep this place from becoming another battleground. We weren't guarding a country. We were guarding a passage. And as long as we held it, the world, what was left of it, had one more chance to move without falling apart. That was our fortress. Not walls. Not weapons. Rules, routine, and the stubborn refusal to let fear run the road. And tomorrow morning, when the first engine came up the hill and headlights touched the barrier, I'd be there again. Steady, calm, and ready to make the line real. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.